Hello again. In this video, I'm going to talk about the camera that I'm currently filming on. That is the Nikon Coolpix L110. I'm currently filming on that camera on a tripod selfie stick. Kind of a bulky one. It's a little heavy to carry too. Nowhere near as light as a phone. But I want to talk about the video capabilities of this camera. Yeah, it only shoots 720p standard HD video, 30 frames per second, and there are very few manual controls. Like, for instance, you can't control aperture or shutter speed. So, why would you use something like this for video? Well, same reason that I ended up buying this thing. Currently, as I film this, it shows up on Amazon for like 75 bucks. That's a lot cheaper than a lot of other cameras that are much more capable. It makes decent video. It's not top of the line by any stretch. During this video, I'm going to be comparing it to a full-frame DSLR that I have, as well as a cell phone that shoots 4K, Google Pixel 5. That I have. My mantra is to do the best I can as cheaply as I can. I managed to pick up this L110 that I'm shooting on for like 75 bucks, something like that, which, like I said, that's the current price at Amazon. Actually has a pretty good zoom, 15x zoom, and does a pretty decent job. It's not the best in the world, but far from the worst either. Certainly usable. I wouldn't go trying to make film with it or anything, but for creating YouTube videos, that's just fine. So stay tuned, and I will show you the capabilities of this camera and what you can do with it. The Nikon L110 is a compact digital camera with 12.1 megapixels. The sensor size on it is 6.16 by 4.62 millimeters. It's a CCD. For comparison, the Nikon 1J1 mirrorless has 13.2 by 8.8 millimeters sensor. A micro four thirds camera has 17.3 by 13 millimeters. And the Nikon D600 full frame camera has 35.9 by 24 millimeter sensor. Despite the small sensor size, the L110 actually does take some pretty good video. It has a 15x optical zoom. Focal length range is 5 to 75 millimeters, which is an angle of view equivalent to 28 to 420 millimeters in a 35 millimeter equivalent. F-stop range is 3.5 to 5.4. One thing I would like to discuss up front is the smear that was visible when I had the camera on a selfie stick at the beginning of this video. According to the manual for the L110, smear is sometimes visible when you record under certain lighting conditions. You can see it here where the sun brightly reflects off of the car over my shoulder. The manual says that to reduce smear effects, avoid bright objects such as the sun, reflections of the sun, and electric lights when recording a movie. This tells me that the L110 isn't the best choice for carrying on a selfie stick and filming yourself, unless you can control the lighting or it's not a bright sunny day. Another thing I'd like to discuss is the zoom capabilities of the L110. I'm taking these shots from my balcony. Notice the detail in the brickwork and how you can read the building number when zoomed all the way. For comparison, here's the Pixel 5 smartphone, first at 1080p. The building number can't be made out, and the brickwork shows no detail. Finally, I shot the same scene on the Pixel 5 in 4K, and the results actually looked worse than it did at 1080. This indicates to me that if you're currently using a smartphone to create video and you need more zoom capability, the L110 just might be useful for you. Going through the menu system, you can change your movie options from HD to VGA to QVGA. I'm not sure when you would use anything besides HD. Another option on the menu for video is autofocus mode. You can set it to single or full-time autofocus. Using single autofocus, the manual states that focus is locked as soon as you hit record. Full-time autofocus, on the other hand, doesn't lock the focus, but instead will continuously try to focus on a subject. At times, you can see the camera hunting for focus while you're trying to record. This can sometimes result in you missing the shot, as focus is the one thing that can't be fixed in a video editor. The third option on the video menu is wind noise reduction. This is supposed to reduce the effects of wind noise when we're recording movies. My own personal testing with this is yes, it does reduce wind noise, but it also will distort your voice or any other sounds that are coming through the microphone. So I tend to use this one judiciously. One of the few exposure controls you have on this camera is ISO sensitivity. It goes up from 80 all the way up to 6400. I typically tend to run it in auto because I can't control the shutter speed or the aperture. Exposure compensation is one of the manual controls you have for exposure on the L110. You can set it from +2 to -2 in steps as shown here. Exposure compensation can be quite useful. Notice the clouds in the background of this scene right here. This first clip is taken with exposure compensation set to 0 or neutral. The second clip is set with it set to -0.7. Notice how it brings out just a little bit more detail. The third clip is set exposure compensation -1.3, brings out even more detail in the clouds, though it does darken the image. And the fourth clip is set to exposure compensation of -2. It darkens the image significantly, though it does bring out quite a bit of detail in the clouds. Now I want to talk about the various scene modes that are available. You can use things like portrait, landscape, night portrait, etc., etc. And it goes on through the selections. One thing I noticed when I was trying these out, and you can see in the next couple of clips here, when you use those on the Nikon L110, they really don't make much of a difference. Maybe no difference at all, at least when it comes to shooting video. Perhaps they do make a difference on still pictures, but I'm not sure. The S3500, on the other hand, that I demonstrated in a previous video, if I use scene auto, then you see what's on the screen, and then if I go with dusk dawn, it actually does darken the image. Macro mode is interesting to play with. While I had the camera in the garden, I saw a bee buzzing around some flowers, so I decided to follow it. This footage is zoomed and slowed down so you can see how it works. There are several different options for white balance. Auto, preset manual, where you can point to something and take a picture of it in order to set your white balance. Daylight, incandescent, fluorescent, cloudy, and flash. These two clips here were taken from the same vantage point with an overcast sky. In the first one I used white balance daylight, and in the second one I used white balance cloudy. You can tell there's a little bit of a difference as far as how it handles the colors and everything. Finally, I want to talk about color options, which are available on the shooting menu. There's standard, vivid, black and white, sepia, and cyanotype. Here are a few clips demonstrating the differences. The first one is with standard color. I purposely chose a red car for this demonstration. The second one is vivid. And you can actually see there's a little bit of a color pop with regard to the car. The third one is black and white or monochrome. Fourth one is sepia. Makes it look like an old-time picture. And the final one is cyanotype, which is also monochrome, but it gives a little bit of a purplish tint to it. And this concludes my review of the Nikon Coolpix L110. I went through the different capabilities, showed that it has a really good zoom, and you can do a few things with different color options, and exposure compensation can be quite useful too. My recommendation is if you're on a very tight budget and you're able to pick up this camera used cheap, don't be afraid to do so. It only shoots in 720p, but most people, the vast majority, watch YouTube videos on their phones. So they really wouldn't probably be able to tell the difference. I'm shooting right now on the L110 in 720 and upscaling it to 1080 in my video editor. And can create some pretty usable videos, especially if you need to zoom a lot. That is very important. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will be seeing you in the next one.